Just a few housekeeping tips. We are recording the session. It will be available on my Blackboard site, which is under Human Resources / Professional Development, probably the middle of next week. And we are live streaming, so people can view this from their computers. So anything that you say is being picked up by these microphones, so hold your questions until they're asked for, and just keep your comments to a minimum. If you're sharing something with a person beside you, I'd hate for that to be in our recording. Sometimes it's not always good. But without anything else, do you have any questions for me before we get started? Okay. And feel free to let those of you in your department that couldn't be here today, let them know that it will be available on the Blackboard site after the session is over, about midweek. I'm going to hand it over now to Dr. Price and Michelle, and let's learn about the budget process.
Thank you, Daisha, for the introduction. I know this is probably exactly what everybody wanted to do on a Thursday afternoon, is sit around and hear about budgeting. But hopefully, we go through a few things, you'll understand maybe some of the reasons why we're looking at making changes, or some of the reasons why we are making changes to our budgeting process, and then kind of what maybe get some tips from us. Also, kind of how are you going to go about entering the budget request into compliance list. So just some general information on why we're making change. Okay. First of all, we received a lot of feedback in this past year and in years prior from faculty and staff wanting more input into their budgets. They want to have some ownership of it. They want to be able to plan out things better. So a large portion of it came from that. I know a few years back there was even a modification to the budget process that was made for that purpose, where people wanted feedback into it. Also, the business office, we have limited information about upcoming items for various departments on campus. We often get caught by surprise. I can give you a quick example of that. I had sent an email this past week on the budget item for next year, and Dr. Chapman, her reply back was, and don't forget about the system conference that's coming up. There'll be a lot of faculty members who go to that. Well, that's not typically a conference that I would attend, so I don't always think about, this is coming up this year and it's only every couple year process. The other is, a lot of times different departments will have individual department accreditation, and there's costs that go with that. Sometimes there's an on-site group that comes in, cost that goes with that. And we just have no way of keeping track of all those different things that come up and what the current rate is for, maybe a early childhood accreditation visit or something like that. So having departments be able to better know what they've got coming up that next year really allows us the opportunity to not get caught by surprise as much. Another piece of it too, the budget request process allows us to respond more timely when we receive questions about our needs from outside groups. A lot of times when the General Assembly is in session, we can get an email and have something, we get it at 10 o'clock that morning and have something due by 5 o'clock that afternoon, and it's, tell me about your equipment needs in such and such a department. And unless we can go find the faculty who are responsible for that program, or we can put something together really quick, we don't really have any, long-term thinking that went into that. Whereas the process that we're moving towards will have something much easier. It will have been where faculty and staff have had time to really think about the needs and where they want their departments to go for these items to be in there. So that way we're giving better information to groups that are requesting. It's to be a difficult question for us now to answer, how much money do you really need to operate this program if you were to do the things you want to do there? Well, what has happened in the past, I think, is typically people spend until tell you to stop spending. There hasn't been as much planning that went into that. So this allows for better responses to those. Also, there's some things that probably are not going to be funded out of the state budget, just because of the size of the budget, just because of all the other needs that go. There may be some equipment, there may be some things that just don't fit. But there's grant opportunities that we may see and be able to direct those to a certain way and say, you know, if we took this department's request with this and added it to this over here, we could put together a nice grant that would make it receive some funding for it. So it allows us the opportunity to kind of see what's really out there and see if there's some ways to tweak it and possibly, you know, get the funds in a different manner. Another one of the big drivers is because of SACS. It talks about in some of the different standards we've got to meet. The institution has a sound financial base, demonstrated all this, that support the mission of the institution, and it's preceded by sound planning, is subject to sound fiscal procedures, and is approved by the governing board. Well, you know, we do have a lot of planning that has gone into our budget, but by actually tying it into the compliance assist process, into that planning process, we're able to better demonstrate to SACS that it is part of an actual plan, that it's got sound planning that went into it. Another piece, and you'll see in the budget request process in our document in just a second, talks about institution has adequate physical resources. But we've got a section in there that talks about your facilities and what the needs are there. So this way we're able to show again to SACS when they come, you know, that we've taken that into consideration. Departments have been able to look at their physical resources each year. They are then telling us, and we're able to make some progress on changes, modifications that are going to be needed. Some of them will be minor and probably can be taken care of relatively quickly. Others may be more long-term. It may be, okay, if we're going to do this, it's really going to require a new facility. And maybe that kind of goes into some future long-range facility plans that we may have. But this process will allow us to show that as well. Again, maintains physical facilities, et cetera, that appropriately serve the needs of the institution's educational programs. So you see a lot of these tie into that where we need some better documentation for SACS as we go through. Just an overview of the process. And we're pretty close to being able to send this out. We just haven't gotten it out today yet, I do not believe. But May 1st of each year, we're going to send out departmental budget reports to same ones that Tamron typically sends out each month. But these will have pretty much all the expenses you've had for that year. So it'll give you a good idea of what you spent, where you've spent those funds on. So you'll have pretty much a year's bit of information, the most current. By June 15th, we're asking that departmental budget requests are due to the business office. We'll show you what that looks like in a minute and the signatures and everything that are required, but we'll have those come into the business office. By June 30th, we're asking that vice presidents, if they have new positions that they're going to be requesting in the next fiscal year, that we have that information as well. Kind of the plan is that we want to be able to see exactly how much supplies, equipment, et cetera, every area wants, what new positions may be out there. So when we start allocation process later on, we've got some idea of the total magnitude of what's needed. July 1st until budgets are allocated, state funded supply, equipment, purchase, et cetera, we need to focus on what we need to get started in the fall semester. So if you've got items you need to get moving, let's go ahead and do that. If it's more of a, some of those items that you put into your budget for the next year, but you don't have to begin the fall semester, let's wait until the budgets are actually allocated. So that way, you know, you may not get everything that you requested. Most likely, you know, won't get everything that was requested. So I'd hate for you to start spending thinking that's what it was and then have to cut out other things that you need later on. So, kind of start out with what you have to have, and then hopefully as quickly as possible, we'll get the rest of the information to you. By August 1st, we're going to have everything combined, all the requests, in a document that shows the entire needs of the college. So we're going to pull all that together so we've got something to work with. After we receive the budget from the system office, we'll kind of take what we've currently got as far as payroll from positions in place, the new retirement rates, that kind of stuff, some of the kind of ongoing every year annual costs that we've got to have. We'll pull that aside so that way we know exactly how much in funding is available to allocate to different departments. So from there, PC, basically what I've got listed here is just PC will decide how to move forward. Some of those funding sources, such as basic skills, the adult basic ed, those programs, it's set aside in the budget. This is what you've got for that particular program. So there's no real allocation to that. Curriculum, for example, has a little bit more. They've got a bigger pool and there's a lot of different programs. So, talked some before with Dr. Chapman about it. We talking more with Dr. Merritt going forward. But one of the ideas that they had was for kind of how they've been doing some of the equipment allocations in the past, where the deans get together and try and figure out how to shift that funding around to the different programs so everybody can get the things they need. So again, that'll be a discussion that kind of proceeds from there. A lot of the other areas, though, again, it's more specific. It's kind of told this is how much you got for that area. Library books, we get, here's your number for library books. There's no allocation piece to that. It's just kind of there, and we're told this is what it's going to be. As the year goes on, departments will be monitoring their budgets, and so they can make decisions about it. I know in the past I've gotten questions, I want to go on this trip. Can I go on this trip? Well, now you'll be able to get a little bit more of that decision-making responsibility. You can look at your own budget. You can see, here's what I've had this year. This is what I was allocated. Yes, I can send somebody on this trip, or no, or maybe we need to, we originally were going to do 3, maybe we can only do 1. So, departments will be making decisions based on that. April 1st of each year, purchase requisitions will be due to the business office, purchasing. So what we're trying to do is set dates so everybody knows this is what's happening year after year after year. I know before that April 1st purchase requisition deadline, it's changed. It's been here, there, and everywhere, and it leads to confusion. So we're going to set it. This is the date, and it's going to be the date going forward until we're told change the date. So that's at least our plan moving forward.
They see us though.
Some of the tips I would give you for budget. One of them is make sure you monitor budgets on a frequent basis. We're just like everywhere else. There are times when things may get coded to your department that don't belong to your department. So if you're monitoring it on a normal basis, you know what you've sent over to be ordered, etc. If something surprises you, let us know. We'll be glad to research it. We'll be glad to figure out exactly where it belongs. It's just mistakes happen, things take place. So that's one of the big tips is just monitoring your budget on a frequent basis. The others, Dr. Athens for his division, I believe, is preparing a spreadsheet that's got 3-year averages. So it's got what was spent the last 3 years. That way it allows to look at a longer period of time than just the past budget report. There's a lot of benefits to looking at multiple years. One of them is, again, we talked about maybe the accreditation that only comes up every so often. Well, the more years of that data you've got, you can kind of remember that, oh yeah, a couple years ago, this is why this one was more. I need to plan for it on this side as well. So that would be one tip too, is to look at more than 1 year. The other item I would give you is, going forward, the budget request page in Compliance Assist is going to be available throughout the year. So if you get wind of something that's needed for your department, go ahead and place a little placeholder in there for that as you're thinking about it. Because if you're like me, 10 minutes later you forgot you thought that you needed that, or that this was, you got a number or you got a quote on what this was going to cost. So go ahead and, as things get, as you're aware of things, jot them down. Another thing I did a lot of, or still do a lot of, is try and keep track of when different things were purchased. Say for college vehicles. If we know that vehicles of this age with this many miles on it, et cetera, we kind of keep running track of those type things, kind of can start planning out, okay, I've probably got another year, or I've got to plan this in the next year. And it gives you the ability to really look at them. So kind of somehow or another, just keeping track of what you purchase, when you purchase it, is another tip. Let Michelle kind of walk through some of how to enter the information.
Okay. So we're really excited that we can streamline this process for you. Budget request and Compliance Assist. Okay, let's see. If you have a computer, you can follow along with us if you'd like. If you want to log into Compliance Assist, I'll start from the beginning. So you can log into Compliance Assist by going onto the intranet. Will be there on the left side menu. Just click on Compliance Assist here, and you can, if you've forgotten your username or password, you can always give IE a call or email, and we'll reset that for you.
Is there a generic one that they can use, just in case they don't have it with them today?
No, actually, we do not have a generic one. Because it won't allow you to edit, really, so, I'm sorry. Can everyone log in that's here? Oh, I guess you'll, okay, so program review. When you see on the, across the top menu, you can click on your program. I'll just go to our template here. And the most recent year is where we'll find our newly rolled out required budget request page. And like Philip had mentioned, we will have these years all in the future, so you'll always be able to see the 2013-14 budget request here. And as the years go on, you'll see the ones that are applicable for that year. So you can see we have a little bit of instructions here if you ever forget about how to fill out this budget request page. Specifics on the tables that we have here.
So we're getting unauthorized access attempt.
To the budget request page only?
That's the only one that I've clicked on. So is that?
That's probably the same thing.
Oh, that is strange.
It says contact a site administrator to request access. How many of you are experiencing
Does
that?
everyone have that?
Are y'all able to get in? We're good.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the password. We hacked it.
We hacked it, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I, can I take this off? Well, no passwords right here. Don't worry about it. I can, well, how about we go through what this looks like, and those who don't have a password, I can send you a password later. Or reset the accesses, I guess. I'm not quite sure what's happening. But if you can see this, this is what it looks like. And And you can also follow along up here if you can't access it. But again, these are the instructions. The due date is on or before June 15th. And these are the tables that that Philip in his office has set out for us to make it easy for program planners to just kind of fill out what their current fund requests are by category, supplies, travel, ongoing items, and other regular expenses. You might know them better by the codes that you used to be doing it by, which are also here. And they're divided by new equipment requests, additional facilities that you may need, and additional staffing needs for that year, for the planning year.
Some of you may wonder why, like in the current expense items, why we just got the 52XXX rather than, we're trying to make it as simple as we can because, some departments may have 15 codes. And to sit there and try and go through all that can be a little time consuming. So we just said supplies being anything that starts with a 52 in the object code piece of it. Travel being anything that starts with a 531. So, for our purposes as far as allocating budget, we don't have to know if you're talking about in-state ground transportation or if you're talking about registration fees. It's all coming from the same place. So why make it more complicated for you than it needs to? And kind of the same piece with the other. As far as for like the justification for change from the prior year, these are for the items such as if you've got accreditation coming the next year, we need to know that because in reality we don't have much of a choice but to fund some of those things. So we've got to know the different pieces so we know, okay, this is an area we've got to find funding to finish up in the next year. Say for example, Tommy's area, if you've got some equipment replacement or something that has to happen in the next year, if we know that here, that helps us in the allocation process. As far as the new equipment request piece of it, again, we've got it by priorities with description of the different items, amount requested, justification of need, and again, we say if you can reference back to your planning process. That way, we know this is something you've thought about and it fits into your planning. Also, a little bit of just how it will enhance the service you provide. Again, trying to get that SACS tie-in for what we need there. The other piece, and I think this is Ronnie's favorite, is the submission of a project approval form. We can't stress that enough, the need for those forms, because all too often departments will have some piece of equipment ordered, comes in, and then it sits there because we didn't know it was coming in. It didn't have the right electricity, it didn't have the right network drops, it didn't have something that it needs. Whereas if we have that form up front, we can go ahead and get those pieces in place, and then departments aren't as frustrated because it takes time to do these things. We at least can put it into our process. As far as additional facility needs, again, this is if there's some change that's needed to the area that you operate. So that way we can start planning those. And also, same thing with trying to have a tie-in for SACS there as far as justifications for it and why we're saying the things we need. Additional staff needs, again, same type thing. What positions requested, is it full-time, part-time? You may have something in your planning process that said we really need to start focusing on such and such, but we don't have the resources to do it. This would be where you said, okay, this is how we can add this. It may be that you've seen that there's a real need for more English courses or something like that, and this is where you can come in and pull that together. And telling us how it will enhance what you do. Again, down here we've got your department unit codes. That's the last little digits on your account code. You get the signature of the person who filled it out, and then a signature of either the dean or vice president, depending on which areas you're in. And then that whole document, you just print it out, it's sent over to Tamara, and we'll put it together from there. Any questions on,
So those of us that do have multiple budget codes, like under supplies, you want just the total for everything in the amount requested there? You don't need it itemized at all?
just everything with a 5-2 little piece, put it together, everything with a 5-3-1, just put it together and we can go from there. Any other questions about that?
Again, it functions just like a form, and it will be printed out for Tamara to use. So just to kind of refresh, to make this fillable, when you want to fill it out, you just go up to Options, Edit Item, and then it'll be in this second one is where all the tables are, the second text box. You can just fill out maybe something a little bit more justifiable than that, so PC can make educated decisions on how they're going to be funding everything. And again, that project approval form, you can just indicate attached right here. And you can do that by, if you scroll down to this text box called Supporting Documents and Upload File, you'll be able to find this from, wherever you save it in your computer, that electronic file. And then it'll all be right there. That's kind of cool to kind of have everything right here. If Ronnie wants to use it to kind of see how everything's connected, he can find it here, and it'll be easily accessible by both the finance office and maintenance. And then, you can fill out everything. And then when you're
electronic signatures, or do you have to?
And they will be handwritten signatures. So you'll fill out everything up until the department unit code in the computer. You can save and close, check in, and then everything will be filled out here. You can see it, you can view it, and then to print it, you can go up to Options again and press Printable File. And you can print it, it'll default as a PDF, and you can just press Generate PDF. And what you should see is all the instructions, all this, these background information at the top should just be on the first page. And you can either submit both of them or just the second page. Just submit the second page. And here's where you can get that signed by whoever needs to be signing it.
And then it goes to Tamara. So interoffice mail to Tamara. Once it's signed. When it's electronically submitted, where does that go? Does it just stay there?
It stays in compliance. And I want to say when SACS comes or whatever, we print them a file of everything that's in it.
Yeah, SACS has full access. We'll have full access to this, and it will just be so easy to just pull it right up for, on a dime they can ask for it, and it'll all be here as long as the program planners have filled it out and put it in here by year.
Got it.
Are there any other questions about how to put data in there?
If you need to add more rows for equipment, can we do that?
We did.
You can't, would you like that? Yes, you can. I will show you how. I think for the, let's see, which, by priority, so it'll go under it. It'll go under the third priority if you'd like to add more equipment. And you can, I don't know if you can really see it, but when you click on that last row, there's these boxes that show up on the left, and they're actually arrows. So it's a bottom arrow, it's a pointing down arrow, and it just adds a new row. And then you can, add whatever you want here.
But now, one thing I will mention on that is, let's say you're buying computers. We don't need priority 1 being one computer, priority 2 being, if there's some things that can be lumped all together, do that. I'd rather see computer labs, room number such and such, than I had individual things like that. And there's even going to be some other things rather than computers. That was just the easiest example. But some of the things in the industrial technology division may be big pieces that all go together. So that way we've got more, an easier item to work with.
Just for clarification, the 1, 2, and 3 there, are those priority numbers? So we put everything for a one priority just on that row and it just expands? Or do we add a row for everything that for each item we're requesting?
Be for each item, so it'd be this item is my first priority. This is the one all the way down to,
Top.
so it's just the top priority.
Any more questions?
So what are the sections again? Can you go through that one more time? Faculty needs, equipment.
Get out of here.
New equipment,
Funds requested, like supplies and travel, new equipment, additional facilities, and staffing needs, additional.
You'll see one thing too, the bottom two talk about additional items. So this is kind of assuming that you're keeping what you've had before. The other two, and we debated a lot on wording for this, but this is actually for your other cost and for your equipment. This is your request. It's not, I want this in addition to what I got last year. This is your actual request for those two items. Like I said, we workshopped a lot of different phrases of how to say that and finally just took it off because it got kind of confusing. But you know, it's intended for those two to be your actual budget request for the next year and not just additional needs beyond what you've already been receiving.
so what about services? So say I don't need equipment, but I need services or professional development, leadership training. Where would that item go?
It would go up in that table 1 and most likely in this other regular expenses. And you could put down a justification, I need such and such.
Based off of,
Yeah.
okay. Then I can upload it and then, or attach a document.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these justifications can be brought from all over in your current planning, so that you'd find in your student learning outcomes, or if you're a service area, your administrative outcomes. So that serves as really hard support for, getting what you need, justifying what you need.
So citing a student learning outcome or a
Or an administrative
outcome.
Mhm.
Okay.
Or any of these quality, but really anything in this planning year can be justification for it. So it's not like, it shouldn't be new information. It should be stuff that's already in here. So again, just kind of closing the loop, if you will, of this whole planning process. It's not just by student learning outcome that these closing the loops are happening. It's a whole program plan.
So that's a great point about the justification, citing what we already planned.
Yeah, Saks will have a field day with this. They're just gonna love us.
Maybe that'll be justification for PC too.
Yeah.
So maybe I can get some money. Okay.
But of course, as you're going through this process, if you do have any questions, we'll be glad to assist in any way with that. And I know, it's going to kind of be new to a lot of areas to develop their own budgets. We'll be glad to help you with that piece of it too, sit down, walk you through whatever we can. Because, it's in our best interest too for your budgets to be as good as possible, well thought out as possible. And if we see something that we question, we're going to ask you about it just because, we want to help. We're trying to make this process better for everybody, to be able to give some of the things that people have requested back to them, but also so that we can meet our SACS requirements and meet some of these other requests and needs that we have. If there are not any other questions, that's pretty much what we had for today.
Yep.
So Michelle, can you check on our accesses to see if we can?
Sure. Is this still live?
It is.
I don't know.
Just whenever you get back to your desk or
Oh,
whatever,
yeah.
just let us
Yeah, I
know.
will.
Send us an email. let us know. You can now view.
Mhm.
So I'd like to go and just look at it on my own.
Well, thank you for your time and attention today, and we'll be, like I say, be glad to help in any way, just let us know.